All right, this candidate was traumatized by the wars that she was in, quite literally. But we'll get to that after we discuss her really interesting district. Brittany Ramos Debarros is joining us. She's running for Congress in New York's 11th district, held by a Republican, a very pro-Trump Republican. What in the world is going on? This story has lots of twists and turns. Brittany was also organizing director for About Face, Veterans Against the War. So Brittany, welcome.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
Yeah, no problem. So tons of interesting parts to this. So this used to be a Democratic seat. It was Max Rose who held it. Then he lost to a Republican because he ran as Republican light. And given a choice between a real Republican and a fake Republican, people generally choose real Republicans. So he's running again now. You're running as the progressive alternative to him. Brittany, it got redistricted too, if I understand right. So what is this district now? Is it a Trump district in the middle of New York City or no?
So I would argue that this district has never been a Trump district. It's been an anti-establishment district. And I think that the reality is that, a lot of people from both sides of the aisle have really misunderstood working class people, right? The issue here has been bigger than red or blue, Democrat or Republican. We are a quintessential blue collar district. Staten Island is the most rapidly diversifying county in New York State. And a lot of people have this image of us as Trump country, but this is really worker country. We've seen that with some of the groundbreaking organizing happening with the first Amazon warehouses ever unionizing here, and other incredible fights that are happening right here because people are fed up. They don't care about party. The true majority here are people who feel let down by the system overall, who have checked out, who have kind of given into this hopelessness and disillusionment. And so what I think that we're building here, we are a progressive alternative, but I think we're a people's alternative. We are people who are saying, look, we are the majority. We have had the power, and if we organize and come together, things that people have thought impossible become possible. And it's right within reach. Even before the district lines were expanded, we're waiting on new district lines now, which should be out on Monday and then finalized at the end of next week. But with the district that we had before, the district that Max Rose lost, running to the right, running pro-Trump ads, we had a 2-to-1 majority of registered Democrats, but an 11% turnout in the previous Democratic primary. And so, I think that what that tells me is that people are hungry. We know that policies like Medicare for all are popular at a rate of 70% with the general public, and yet I'm the only person in this race who has the courage to say that that's what we need to invest in, especially after this pandemic that we've just experienced, and we have people getting thrown out in the cold, as we've gone through these layered crises, and I'm the only non-millionaire in this race. And so, I think it's really important that we reframe how we look at a district like mine, and the agenda that we're running on is the popular agenda with the public.
Yes, the old district was Trump won by 10 points. But as you pointed out, the Democrats have a 2-to-1 registration advantage. It is super trippy. And the one other guy who did great in this district was Bernie Sanders. So your point that it's an outsider district that doesn't like the insiders, et cetera, is a great point. And but Brittany, this is part of the problem, right? We can't wait to run in general elections in districts just like this and give them an outsider message that directly appeals to voters that we think they're going to love, right? But the Democratic Party's constantly blocking us. So that leads us to your primary. So before I get into anything else, did you just say Max Rose ran pro-Trump ads against a Republican last time?
Yes, he ran videos saying, literally celebrating the fact that he stood with Trump as if that was a positive thing. He sent out literature celebrating his collaborations with Trump. And I might add, sending out literature demonizing China and promoting this anti-Asian rhetoric that led to spikes in anti-Asian hate crimes that we saw. And so, I think that when people show you who they are, believe them. He lost, and it's no disrespect to him as a person, as a human, but I think that our communities deserve better and are hungry for better. And in this case, better is just a representative who is taking the time to really connect with our communities of all types. We have one of the largest African immigrant communities in Staten Island. There are just so many of us who have been written off, forgotten. We've been the butt of the joke in New York City, and people feel that. People feel that kind of scorn. And we're right here, this kind of true battleground district. And I think that if we can prove that this is the popular agenda here, then that will have powerful ripple effects across the country. And that is really important for a political project over the next several years and really decades, to build a government that is not a Republican majority or a Democrat majority, but is a people's majority. And we're seeing that a Democrat majority alone right now with the recent vote to codify Roe v. Wade and make sure that we keep the basics like bodily autonomy and the protection of the right to privacy, which has an impact on so many other protected rights right now. We can't pass that at the point that we can't pass that with a Democratic majority, then we need to start thinking differently. And what I think about is the fact that we need a majority of working class champions who will really fight for the agenda that the people want and see themselves as deeply rooted and accountable to our communities who are suffering right now. And that's what my race is about. I think that that's what our project is about for the next several years. And I think that in order to do that, we have to understand really soberly what we're up against and organize accordingly. There are PACs, APAC, other PACs with billionaires, just funneling millions of dollars to smear people like me and many other progressives around the country who are running right now to back Republicans and Democrats like my opponent who have undermined us and betrayed us time and time again. And when you're a working class candidate like me, that means that you're often going into debt or having to, kind of bend over backwards, even just to be able to run, let alone to raise the kind of money that's necessary to go up against that. But we've done really well. We've raised over 600,000 in grassroots funds. I'm so proud of that without taking a dime of big real estate money, which is a big deal in New York City, or corporate PAC money. But it's gonna take time, and we're still marginalized in the House and certainly in the Senate. We have to get our numbers up. That's gonna take time. And I think that it's gonna take us really getting focused on the idea that I'm sick of making demands. That's why I agreed to run. I'm an organizer. I never thought that I would run. I'm the kind of person who's in the street. Honestly, I didn't really believe in electoral politics as a focal point for a long time. And I know a lot of people feel that way. But what became clear to me is I'm tired of making demands of power. I want the people to be in power. And that means that we have to contest to take political power for the people by running candidates who are truly accountable to the people and committed to that agenda.
So the great news about this is that the press is actually taking Brittany very seriously. Because I say that as great news because normally progressives don't get that treatment. So I think that they got traumatized by missing AOC and Jamal Bowman winning in New York. And Brittany has raised more money than AOC did or Jamal Bowman did. And so it's gotten the attention of the press, and they're going, whoa, a progressive might win here. And so, by the way, BrittanyForCongress.org, when somebody is not only doesn't take corporate PAC money, but is being attacked by corporate PAC money, and she's being attacked by millions from corporate PAC money, you gotta help her out. BrittanyForCongress.org, a true progressive in this race. And Brittany, I don't agree with you. I would love to personally insult Max Rose. Anyone running pro-Trump ads in a Democratic area, I mean, I don't care what area it is. If you want to kiss Trump's ass, there's a whole party for it, and it ain't the Democratic Party. And this is a Democratic primary. Let's keep it real, Brittany. The only reason anybody would vote for Max Rose is because they got tricked into it in a Democratic primary by the tons of ads that I'm sure he's running, and probably by Democratic leadership who loves incumbents and loves conservative Trump-loving Democrats.
Yeah, Absolutely. I mean, I knocked doors for him in 2018 because he raised so much money with DCCC support so early. And also, coming from a background with a lot of connections to wealth, that gives a candidate like him a leg up. And a lot of us said we want to get the Republican out. The previous Republican was also terrible, and I don't regret that, but I definitely was really disappointed and felt so betrayed as I watched what played out. I never expected him. I understood that he was more centrist than I was even then. But he promised a lot of us in the community that he would stand by Palestinian community that showed up in really powerful numbers to organize him, organize for him, that he would show up for progressives who came from all over New York City, including Park Slope, to invest in this race. He promised us that he would fight for Medicare for all. All of these things. And then, it's one thing if you don't show up to fight for us, but it's another thing to literally go out of your way to stand with a wannabe dictator like Donald Trump. And it's beyond just those ads, voting against passing the War Powers Act the War Powers resolutions repeatedly that, Ro Khanna and others introduced, that were meant to rein in Trump's war powers and simply ensure that he couldn't unilaterally start World War III with Iran when we were teetering on the edge because of an extrajudicial assassination. That the president at that time, Donald Trump, carried out. It's wild to me that you have someone, especially as a former captain myself, knowing what's at stake. Lives that are at stake, the environmental destruction. War is the culmination of all violence. Imperialism has dragged us into occupation after occupation, war after war, while our neighbors are rationing their insulin. And to have someone, especially who is still an officer, who is willing to make votes like that in my mind betray not just the American people, but also people around the world, is just unacceptable. And we don't need to settle for that. And, again, I don't think that this campaign is about me being some kind of savior in contrast, but it's about people power. It's about saying, look, we are the majority already. Working class people in this district who want change are the majority. And when we come together, we can do incredible things. We are the real face of power here.
Yeah, Brittany, one last question as we're out of time here. Look, I have tremendous disdain for Max Rose. He's deeply conservative. He's a hawk. He wants war. He lied about it. And of course, the reason he wanted Trump to have those powers is because he thought he might bomb Iran, and Max Rose would have loved it if Trump had started a war with Iran. So let's keep it real on who Max Rose is. If Democrats reelect him or elect him in that primary, it's a massive mistake. It's like putting a Republican in office. It's crazy. Anyway, Brittany, last question is, look, you both served in Afghanistan. You did and Max did. You came away with very different lessons than he did. He came away with, great, let's start more wars. Imperialism and wasting blood and treasure is a great idea. You came back with the opposite impression. Why?
I can't speak to why Max has taken away the lessons that he did. But for me, I saw the way that I went there a true believer. I went to school thanks to an Army scholarship. That's, I talk a lot about how much we need to confront what it says about us, that our only real at scale federal jobs and college scholarship program requires you to carry a gun for the government. Like we need to really think about that. And I am one of the people who went to school thanks to that program, but then I was sent to a war based on lies, and when I went there, I believed I was gonna be protecting Afghan civilians from the bad guys and fighting for democracy. But what I saw was that we were so obviously just adding to the violence, doing a lot more harm than good. And I saw the way that corporations were running the show. I saw that. I sat there with a maintenance platoon that was entirely capable of getting a deadline platoon back online that was a high value asset that was really critical for security. And we sat there and we couldn't actually fix and get that platoon back online because there was a corporate contract that said that only corporate mechanics could work on those vehicles, even though we had the parts and knowledge to fix them days and days in advance, which is a big deal in a combat zone. And so, what was clear to me then is that even when you look through the lens of national security, right? Even if you're a person who thinks that kind of big stick military force projection is our best strategy to be safe, this corporatism, the control of corporations over, our government, and the kind of unity of both parties, the elites of both of those parties, kind of collaborating toward that corporate control, really undermines even our national security, even through that lens, right? And so it just became clear to me, and it took me a while to find the language. But once I realized, I joined the Poor People's Campaign, I joined About Face, and I started speaking out because I realized that we have a responsibility to tell the truth. And I was threatened, I was put under investigation, smeared in the headlines, threatened with court-martial for conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman, which is still the title of that charge, for sharing literal facts from our own government reports about those wars. Things like the DOD is burning an average of 10.3 million gallons of oil per day, right? We're bombing 7 countries on any given day at that time. And most people can't even name the countries that we're bombing because it's become so quiet and so out of sight, out of mind to most people. And yet we are supposed to be the accountability check on a government and the war making and the way that our military is being used and the way that our troops are being sent to potentially kill and die. And so for me, I ended up speaking out about those things because I knew that those wars were a betrayal to all of us, to our planet, to our people, to people around the world, to our troops, to veterans. As we have veterans homeless on the street, and some people try to blame immigrants and poor people, and yet you have half of the military budget, half of an almost $1 trillion budget that goes to corporations, and most people don't realize that. And so, we need leaders who understand the corruptions in that system, see it clearly, and have the backbone to stand up against it. And the reality is, however disillusioned people feel about electoral politics, at the end of the day, this is, an arena of incredible power. And when we look at our other countries in the global south, so many, Bolivia, many others that have stood up, elected some of the first indigenous leaders, some of the, right? Like that was because of mass organizing that came together specifically to take political power, to take control of governance and put it in the hands of people who were gonna fight for the people or who they believe would fight for the people. And so we know that it's possible. We know that there's a precedent for it. And I think that we have to be grounded and disciplined in our fight to address these things, because we will not codify Roe v. Wade or pass Medicare for all or pass a Green New Deal until we have more working class champions in Congress. That's why I'm running. That's why I need anyone who's watching support, because we have to continue over time. We can't allow, our enemies want us to be hopeless. They want us to give in to that disillusionment and to check out, because that's how they win. That's how they protect their power. And so I am leaning into hope and determination as a discipline, as Miriam Kaba says, and a determination that this campaign is not just about me, win or lose. We are building power together, organizing everyday people who have been left out, forgotten, ignored, told that they didn't matter. And that is the real power in this country. And it's the only way we're gonna see the kind of bold changes that we really need to see, and to save lives, and to create a future where we can all live in dignity.
All right, well, Brittany Ramos Debarros, obviously a truth teller, that's for sure. Ready to bring that fire to DC, which we would greatly enjoy. Brittany for Congress.org. Brittany, thank you for joining us, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me again, I really appreciate it. It's great to be with you.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.